Dr. Yara Borbara. Yara studied medicine in Moldova. She is a last-year resident of family medicine, currently working at Clalit Health Services in Nazareth. She's also active among young Christians in her community as she navigates her true identity in the midst of a complex reality. Please, let's all welcome Dr. Yara Borbara.
Sorry, Marah, but I don't think you were being my keeper. That was so good that you just made it harder to speak after you. Okay, so today, as you see, I will be speaking about the one and only COVID-19 pandemic. But I will not be speaking about the SARS-CoV-19 characteristics or the symptoms the infection causes or the diagnosis that a lot of you or most of you are by now I am aware of it, and I will be speaking more about the epidemiology and the vaccinations and how did each country of Israel and Palestine cope with the pandemic and what were the dynamics between the two. Okay, they instructed me, yes, okay. So the first reported case of the COVID-19 infection was reported in Wuhan, China in December 2019. And it subsequently spread more globally, which led to the WHO, the World Health Organization, to announce it as a public health emergency of international concern on the 30th of January 2020. And as it spread even more, it was declared as a pandemic on the 11th of March 2020. Okay, so just like a quick explanation of terminology, an endemic disease is a disease that's constantly present in a population or region with relatively low spread. An epidemic disease is a sudden increase in cases spreading throughout a large population. An example of that would be the Ebola virus in West Africa between the years 2014 and 2016. And the pandemic is a sudden increase in cases across several countries and continents of the world. And the biggest example is COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so the first case in Israel was confirmed on the 21st of February 2020 as a lady who came back from a cruise ship called the Princess Diamond in Japan. She tested positive for the virus. And on the 11th of March 2020, the same day, the WHO declared it as an international health emergency of international concern. So Israel started implementing social distancing and other rules in order to contain the virus, the spread of the virus. And on the 19th of March 2020, it was declared as emergency. And the Prime Minister then, Bibi Netanyahu, said that rules that have been implemented will be legally enforceable and all the violators would be fined. And on the 20th of March 2020, an 88-year-old woman in Jerusalem have passed away from the virus, and it was declared as the country's first casualty. Okay. Okay. As we all know by now, the pandemic affected all aspects of life, whether it be economic, tourism, education, social life, etc. But there was also a reversed effect of politics on how the pandemic was managed in Israel, because it happened in a time of political crisis between the years 2019 and 2021, where four Knesset snap elections happened in the snap of 2 years only. during April 2019, September 2019, March 2020, the very beginning of the pandemic, and March 2021. So the Prime Minister then, until the 13th of June 2021, Bibi Netanyahu was still serving as the Prime Minister. But he was facing several trials against him, as there were corruption scandals against him. So he seized the opportunity and he wanted to lead the country out of the pandemic. And that's when the roles of vaccinations comes in. Because they were not only aiming to contain the virus as a preventative measure, to decrease the spread, but it was also a mean for him to maybe gain more public popularity. So an agreement was signed with the Pfizer pharmaceutical company, where Israel was prioritized to get the vaccinations. And in exchange, Israel agreed to give back information to the company on the vaccinations, their efficacy, how long it takes to form antibodies, what were the side effects. They also gave away demographic data as age and gender. But for privacy, it was decided that Israel will not disclose the identity of those vaccinated. So information was actually given on a weekly basis. And this was a big step for the company of Pfizer because doing medical research takes a lot of effort, big amounts of money, a lot of time. So this was a big step for the company. And you can find a censored version of the agreement. Oops, I'll go back. Sorry. Okay. So this is, you can find it on the internet. It was made public by the Israeli authorities on the 17th of January 2021. And the first batch of the vaccines of Pfizer arrived on the 9th of December 2020. It was distributed very fast. Around 1.5 million people, citizens of Israel, were vaccinated within 3 weeks. And a month after, on the 7th of January 2021, there was the first batch of the Moderna vaccine arrived. And giving the vaccination in Israel happened, skipping, okay, through 3 phases. First phase was given for healthcare personnel, people working in hospitals, primary care clinics, geriatric hospitals, dentist clinics, nursing, and medical students. And it was extended and given to people older than 60 years, and people with chronic health diseases like hypertension and diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, and people with immune-compromised diseases. Phase B was, as time went by, they started giving it to younger and younger citizens. And in phase C, even it started to be given to teenagers. And on November 2021, Pfizer approved of children-sized vaccines, and last week of that month, they started vaccinating children from the age of 5 to 11. Okay. It either skips or it doesn't want to move at all. Okay, so overall, 8 million shots of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine were given, 10 million by the AstraZeneca, Oxford company, and 6 million by Moderna vaccine. Okay. These are graphs from the official site of the Ministry of Health in Israel. On the left side, we see a graph that shows on the age group and the percentage of people vaccinated. And of course, the older the age, the more people are vaccinated. And on this side, this graph shows the percentage of people diseased by the virus. What's interesting is in all age groups, we see more percentage of men diseased from the virus more than women, except for older than 90. Okay. Okay, so this graph shows the number of tests taken, whether it be the PCR test or the antigen supervised test. So the older the age, the less tests are taken, the younger the more. And that's because, of course, because of the vaccination. And at one point also, when the children, school children were not in quarantine or were not studying through Zoom, they were going to schools. Schools started asking for negative tests before starting the school day. And so a lot of the antigen supervised tests were taken, but later on the home antigen test was approved, so less tests of these were taken. Mara, how did you move it? Okay, so this is a graph that shows around the last month the number of PCR and institutional antigen tests taken. At the beginning of the pandemic, only PCR tests were valid for diagnosis. Later on, also antigen supervised tests were approved because so people took it more. It's easier, faster, and cheaper. Okay. Okay, so a very interesting group of people. Now I'll move to the pandemic in Palestine. These were the Palestinian workers. According to the International Labour Organization, through to September 2020, in Palestine, in Israel, there were 134,000 Palestinian workers in Israeli labor market, which is around 13.2% of the Palestinian workers. That's a big percentage. So these workers had a special situation because of the disparity of the spread of the virus between Israel and Palestine. At the beginning, Israel feared that the Palestinian workers would be a source of spreading the infection. But as time went by, and it was obvious that number of cases was much higher in Israel than in Palestine, Israel indicated that it needed the Palestinian workers who work in manufacturing, in agriculture and construction to keep their workplaces, leave the West Bank, go to Israel for at least 1 month before the date of the 22nd of March 2020, and stay there for at least 1 month without commuting. And both Israel and Palestine agreed that Israel would provide accommodation and decent living conditions for these workers. But a few days later, as one of these workers, or a few, started developing the symptoms of the infection, Israel left them on one of the checkpoints, and meanwhile, it wasn't really providing good conditions for the workers. Some of them were even sleeping on the streets. So the Palestinian Prime Minister called upon the workers to leave the work, come back to the West Bank, stay for quarantine for 2 weeks. It was still 2 weeks then rejoin their families. And it wasn't talking still about vaccination then. So the first case of COVID-19 was diagnosed in Bethlehem on the 5th of March 2020. In the Gaza Strip on the 21st of March 2020, I believe there were 2 cases in the beginning. And in Hebron, the spread of the virus was very rapid. Okay. Let's go. Okay, so this is a graph from the official website of the Ministry of Health of Palestine. What's interesting also here, I think it's also expected that more cases of male being diseased from the virus, like in Israel, in all the cities. That's maybe because they commute more and they go to work more than the ladies. And this graph is from the Worldometer website. It shows the number of cases in Palestine from the beginning of the pandemic until the first week of this month. So at any point of the graph, you can put, and it will show you the number of cases up until that date. And if we see all the cases until this month, it doesn't pass the 1 million cases in Palestine. The last I've checked was 2 days ago in Israel, where there were 4.13 million confirmed cases. And what I mean by case, I don't mean like people having the infection, because one person can have the infection twice. So these are cases confirmed. And that can be for many reasons. Maybe because the Palestinian people are more restricted in smaller area. They do not go out a lot and they do not interact as much with other people. So maybe that can be one of the reasons why there are less cases in Palestine. Okay. So this is a health map. It shows the number of cases per area. We see the high number of cases in Nablus, in Bethlehem, in Gaza. Maybe you cannot see there. This is true for February 2022. We can see 2,550 cases in Gaza, and in Hebron around above even 1,000 cases. So as the city of Hebron was trying to contain the spread of the virus, there were restrictions and obstacles. Because on I don't want to say the date wrong, sorry, many dates are. On the 21st of July 2020, the Israeli authorities totally demolished this quarantine center in Hebron. It's a 700 quarantine center in the city. And locals said that the Israeli authorities claim that it doesn't have building construction permit, so it was demolished. Also, in the Gaza Strip, there were other demolitions on the 18th of May 2021, almost total destruction of El Shawa Primary Care Clinic, and substantial damage to Rimal Clinic in Gaza, the only major COVID-19 testing laboratory in the Gaza Strip, was also demolished. So, the vaccinations in Palestine. There was a dispute over vaccination, over responsibility of vaccinating the Palestinian population. The UN said that decreased access of the COVID vaccine is morally and legally unacceptable according to international law laid out by the Geneva Convention for the occupied people. Because the Geneva Convention, according to it, an occupying power is responsible for the health of the occupied people. But those who differ say that according to the Oslo Accords, the responsibility of vaccinating the Palestinian population lies solely upon the Palestinian authorities. So, and Israel's official, they did not choose to be the keeper. Their position was that they are under no legal obligation to provide vaccines to the Palestinian people. But in order to save its interests, Israel saw it was important to vaccinate the Palestinian workers. So in February 2021, it said that it was going to vaccinate from 100 to 120,000 Palestinian workers, and that took place in March. They vaccinated around 50,000 Palestinian workers. But Palestine did get vaccinations. The first 2,000 shots of the vaccines arrived from the Sputnik V Russian vaccine, and it was aimed to the health personnel as the front line. So it was divided in half, 1,000 to the West Bank and 1,000 vaccines to the Gaza Strip. But the 1,000 vaccines of the Gaza Strip arrived on the 15th of February 2021, but the transit was blocked by Israeli border officials. The authority of such shipments ultimately lies with the Israeli Prime Minister Office Unit dealing with national security. And officials said that delay of the passage of the vaccine was due to the fact that the issue was still under view. Why do I say that? Okay. It's because there's something called the vaccine cold chain. It takes a chain of precisely coordinated events in temperature-controlled environments to store and manage the transport of the vaccines. This is called the cold chain, and the vaccines must be continuously stored in a limited temperature range from the time they are manufactured until the moment of the vaccination. So like even 5 hours or 7 hours of delaying getting the vaccines can damage some of the vaccines and waste them, basically. But they eventually reach on the 17th of February, 2021. This is still considered a delay. So, the COVAX facility. Meanwhile, because, the Palestinian population have the right to get vaccinated, the Palestinian Authority signed up for the UN and WHO-backed Gavi program through the COVAX facility, which is called by the CIPI, it is the Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, the WHO working with the partnership with the UNICEF as its key implementing partner. The Gavi is a global alliance for vaccine and immunization, which is a global health partnership with the goal of increasing access of immunization to poor countries. So many of the vaccines that Palestine got were through the COVAX facility. I will go through just some numbers. On the 17th of March 2021, the UNICEF delivered 61,440 doses, 37,440 were from the Pfizer, of the Pfizer vaccine, and 24,000 were the AstraZeneca's. On the 29th of March 2021, Palestine received 100,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China, which was the biggest single shipment that Palestine got of the vaccines. And according to the WHO, as of the 15th of April 2021, 223,000 vaccines were delivered to the West Bank and 300 to the Gaza Strip. This is a graph from the Oxford University website, and it shows the situation of the vaccines up until the 19th of May 2022. And we see that people who, around 2 million people, got at least one dose. Those who are fully dosed were around 1.7 million. And those who got a booster were less than 1 million. Even less than 500,000. The WHO comes out with a monthly situation report of the whole situation, whether it be health map, people vaccinated or confirmed cases, and we see this is for the month of February 2022. We see that around 2 million people vaccinated, as that graph showed, 1.7 fully vaccinated, and those who got the booster were around 300,000 people. And this graph shows, it's a distribution graph of confirmed cases by age group in Palestine. The highest number of cases were in the age group of 20 to 29, followed by age 30 to 39, followed by 10 to 19. So these are the younger people who are more active, who go out to work and whatnot. Okay, I will skip this. So in conclusion, the pandemic imposes health and economic burdens, among many other burdens, on countries affected by it. But as for the occupied people, these burdens seem to be heavier. And the process of healing from them and the rehab takes much longer. So thank you for listening.